Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode. In this video, I would just like to discuss with you the reasons why the reviews for the Star Wars The Last Jedi, why there's such a divergence between the critic scores and the audience scores. You can see here on Rotten Tomatoes, currently The Last Jedi sits at 91%, certified fresh with critics. And yet the audience score is at 48%, and I suspect it's actually a lot lower than that. So why are we seeing this? And Last Jedi is not the only movie this is happening to. There are other TV shows and movies where, again, you see this wide divergence between critics and the actual audience. Now, with the case of The Last Jedi, my theory is that the appeal of The Last Jedi actually diminishes with time. I remember the first time I saw it, I think if you asked me when I came out of the theater, I would have said that I basically liked it. And the reason for that is that the core audience wants to go to a Star Wars movie to enjoy a Star Wars movie. I don't go to movies to be pissed off. So you already have a bias going into the movie to like it, and you have to try really hard to screw that up, which I think The Last Jedi did. And also, The Last Jedi is technically well made. I mean, it's beautifully filmed. The special effects are good. But what happened to me, and what I think happens to a lot of people, is that those qualities are beaten back over time. Just when you think about the movie and how poor the story is, and how poor the characters are, and just how the movie itself really attacks legacy characters and the legacy of the original trilogy. So if you were to ask me when I came out of the theater, probably would have given this 7. But right now, for myself, The Last Jedi may be my least favorite Star Wars movie now. I might give it a 2 out of 10 at best. The other second issue why we might see this big divergence is, frankly, outright manipulation by Disney. And Disney's obviously a huge corporation, and they can really throw their weight around. And I think they have a tremendous influence with a lot of critics. And there's just a lot of, I think, bogus reviews out there. But when you go to the Internet Movie Database, you see right now that it has a review of 7.5 out of 10. But when you actually look at those, actually click on and read the reviews, I mean, I went through pages and pages of this, and I just see tons of 1 out of 10 reviews, like a ton of them. The highest I've seen is 5, but most of the time it's in the 1, 2, or 3 range. And it took me pages to find one that was an 8 review, 8 out of 10. And honestly, it looked to me like it could have been a shell review. So again, like I'm very suspect now of just the way a site like IMDb rates its titles. And now, if you look at how they do it, they say they use weighted rankings to try and even things out. And we're going to talk about this in a bit. But I'm still highly suspicious for the people who saw the movie. They're giving it 1 out of 10s and 2 out of 10s, and there's no way it should be ranked at 7.5 on IMDb. The other issue, the third issue, I think, is just simply the lack of diversity in viewpoint amongst professional critics. I suspect most critics kind of like the social justice warrior, progressive, postmodernist political take that The Last Jedi took. And in that way, they are trying to protect it in the same way they tried to protect the Ghostbusters 2016 movie. And I'm not sure they can get away with that. In fact, I know they can't. But I think that's probably an issue as well. And there's more than a few reviewers out there who seem to take that tack. I mean, when you just go to Twitter, and you look up, there's actually a hashtag for Last Jedi Awful. And I like this one in particular that has Rian Johnson throwing away the Force Awakens script over his shoulders. but you just see tons and tons of negatives and very, very few positives. Now, what does this mean for the future of the Star Wars brand? And I think this likely indicates that Star Wars as a brand, as a universe, is actually in some trouble now. It takes, because people who try to support the movie can say, oh, it still made, $1.3 billion worldwide, and that's very true. But, it feels to me like it's a franchise that is now running on fumes. Star Wars had so much love that even the prequels made money, and not even this movie made money. But people can only take so much before they actually give up hope that they're going to get a decent, real Star Wars movie. And I would also say that with The Last Jedi, I like the prequels. The prequels were bad movies, but they didn't feel like they were actually attacking the fans. And The Last Jedi definitely feels like that. If you look at the original trilogy, the reason why it works so well is because it focused on classic myths in the Joseph Campbell sense of the hero's journey. And there's a reason why those stories resonate through time, going right back from ancient Greece to today. Instead, Last Jedi, under the, I would say now, incompetent leadership of Kathleen Kennedy, has replaced, the hero's journey with social justice, postmodernism garbage. And what that leads to is terrible characters and terrible stories, and with absolutely no character arc. There is, again, no reason why, and it's not an anti-feminist thing. You can have female leads or definitely people of color, but make them real characters. When you look at The Last Jedi, I just feel like you're seeing boxes checked. I don't see real fleshed out characters. And that's why it's so ironic that when it comes to being sexist or even racist, I think the creators of The Last Jedi are guilty of both of those sins. They think it's fine to check a box, but don't make a believable character. And so when you look at what's happening now, back to this Rotten Tomatoes page, Jumanji, which came out 5 days later than Last Jedi, is still number 2 at the box office, whereas Last Jedi has dropped out completely. I've just seen this Wall Street Journal article where it says Last Jedi loses sales momentum, raises concerns for Disney. And like I say, Star Wars is still such a juggernaut that Rome didn't fall in a day, but there are definitely cracks showing. And I think one thing that Kathleen Kennedy perhaps is going to learn soon is, I came back here to an earlier quote from Kathleen Kennedy where she said that, and the exact quote is, "I have a responsibility to the company that I work for. I don't feel that I have a responsibility to cater in some way. I would never just seize on anything. Well, this is a franchise that appealed primarily to men for many, many years, and therefore I owe men something." And another way of saying that is, do you owe your primary fans something? When we come back to this IMDb page, and we look at the breakdown of people who are rating the movie, men typically outvote the women by 7-1, or close to 7-1 across all age groups. And that's kind of showing you the passion of where the fans actually are. And again, this does not mean that you can't have strong female characters, for example, but you need to make characters. You gotta drop the social justice baloney and have real characters that are flawed, have character arcs, and you just can't have Mary Sue's like Rey, for example. And that would actually make these people just happy. But again, I wonder if Kathleen Kennedy has even read A Hero with 1,000 Faces. I doubt she has. When she talks about Star Wars, she just kind of stumbled across it when she was in film school, apparently. She didn't grow up with it or watch it during that magical time. Typically, that all kids experience, I think, before age 13, where something kind of becomes magical. And that's what Star Wars, that's the magic that Star Wars is still living off of. And it's that magic that it desperately needs to recreate. And it's going to recreate that if it is going to survive by focusing on classic storytelling and classic myths, and not the postmodernist garbage that The Last Jedi epitomizes. But again, if you look at this, and you kind of think about the 80-20 rule, and the 80-20 rule is essentially states that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort, or 80% of your profits come from 20% of your workers. And right now, I think Star Wars, just from looking at the internet and looking at all the YouTube videos that have been made, I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has done a very good job now, and Rian Johnson, but Rian Johnson is taking his marching orders from Kathleen Kennedy, of alienating that your key 20%. And for the future, that does not bode well for Star Wars, I think, as a franchise. I know I'm right now really don't care that much about Episode 9. I don't care that much about the Han Solo movie coming out, but we'll see what happens. I definitely don't want Rian Johnson directing any more Star Wars movies. I'm not interested in seeing a trilogy made by him whatsoever. They can beam him back up to the planet of the brain dead as far as I'm concerned. But those are just my thoughts. So to summarize, as to why we have this gigantic divergence between critics and audiences, I think it's one, that Last Jedi loses appeal with time. The more you think about it, the less you like it. Two, I think there's outright manipulation going on some of these major aggregation sites like Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb that's trying to cover for the fact that there is such a backlash against The Last Jedi. And three, I think a lot of critics are just social justice warriors who are trying to defend the latest Ghostbusters 2016. But those are my opinions. If you have any thoughts on that or any other ideas as to why there's such a difference between critics and audience scores, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe. But other than that, thank you for watching, and until next time.